Back on Zinthera 7, preparations were underway for a historic event, a grand ceremony to mark the formal union of Lysara and Elias. It was more than just a wedding. It was a declaration of intent, a promise to forge a new path forward. The announcement sent ripples through the galaxy, drawing representatives from countless species and factions. Some came out of curiosity, others out of obligation, but many arrived with sincere hopes for a brighter tomorrow. The day of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, the twin moons casting a soft glow over the floating cities. The palace gardens, adorned with glowing flowers and shimmering ribbons, buzzed with excitement. Delegates mingled freely, exchanging stories and laughter, their earlier reservations melting away in the warmth of celebration. At the center of it all stood Lysara and Elias, side by side, ready to take the final step in their journey together. As the ceremony began, Lysara wore a gown woven with threads of light, its design blending traditional Vailith elegance with subtle nods to human craftsmanship. Elias, dressed in ceremonial robes gifted by the Vailith people, looked every bit the dignified partner she deserved. Together, they exchanged vows, not just of love, but of commitment to their shared vision of unity. "To stand beside you is my greatest honor," Lysara said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Together, we will build a world where no one is left behind. And to have your trust is my greatest privilege," Elias replied, his gaze locked on hers. "I vow to support you, to fight for what we believe in, and to never stop dreaming of a better future." Their words echoed through the crowd, met with cheers and applause, as they sealed their vows with a gesture both simple and profound. A clasping of hands illuminated by a radiant glow. The atmosphere shifted. It was as if the entire galaxy held its breath, witnessing the birth of something extraordinary. In the months that followed, Lysara ascended to the throne, becoming Empress of the Vailith dynasty. With Elias at her side, she ushered in sweeping reforms aimed at fostering inclusivity and innovation. Trade routes expanded, cultural exchanges flourished, and scientific advancements soared as humanity and Vailiths worked hand in hand. The alliance between Earth and Zinthera 7 served as a model for other species, proving that even the most unlikely partnerships could yield incredible results. Of course, not everyone embraced the changes immediately. Skeptics remained, questioning whether such harmony could truly last. But Lysara and Elias faced these doubts with patience and perseverance, knowing that progress was rarely achieved without resistance. They continued to lead by example, demonstrating that love and determination could overcome even the deepest divides. Years later, as they gazed out at the stars from the palace balcony, Lysara turned to Elias with a smile. "Do you remember when I first saw you at the summit? Everyone thought I was mad for choosing a human." Elias chuckled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "And now, look at us. Turns out, being mad wasn't such a bad thing after all." Lysara leaned into him, her eyes reflecting the endless expanse of the cosmos. "No, it wasn't. Sometimes, madness is just another word for courage." Their story became legend, told and retold across the galaxy. It was a tale of two individuals who defied convention, challenged prejudice, and dared to dream of a world united by love and trust. And though their journey had been fraught with challenges, it had also been filled with moments of beauty, connection, and triumph. As the stars twinkled above, Lysara and Elias knew their work was far from over, but they also knew they would face whatever came next together, partners not just in love, but in shaping a future where anything was possible. For in the vastness of the universe, they had found something rare and precious, a bond that transcended boundaries, a love that changed the stars themselves. And in doing so, they had proven that even amidst the infinite unknown, hope could always find a way to shine. With a curt nod, Zinera stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as quietly as she had come. Alex watched her go, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. He didn't know who or what she was, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to forget him anytime soon. And neither would he. The following days passed in a blur for Zinara as she observed Alex from the shadows, her curiosity growing with each passing moment. She had chosen to remain hidden, perched high in the branches of trees or concealed behind thick bushes, watching his every move. It wasn't just idle surveillance. There was something about this human that intrigued her, something she couldn't quite put into words. Alex's life was simple yet demanding. Each morning, he rose before dawn, working tirelessly on the small family farm nestled at the edge of the forest. The work was grueling, requiring strength and endurance, but Alex tackled it with an ease that surprised Zinara. He hoisted heavy sacks of grain onto his shoulders without complaint, repaired broken fences with steady hands, and tended to livestock with care. Yet what caught her attention most wasn't his physical labor, it was his determination. On the third day, Zinara witnessed something that left her utterly baffled. A group of men approached the farm, their intentions clear from the way they carried themselves. They were thieves, locals who preyed on vulnerable farmers like Alex. When they demanded food and supplies, Alex didn't back down. Instead, he stood firm, refusing to yield even when outnumbered. Zinara watched intently, her sharp eyes tracking every movement. At first, she assumed Alex would lose the confrontation. After all, humans were weak. This was what she had been taught. But then, something remarkable happened. Using nothing more than a wooden pitchfork and quick thinking, Alex turned the situation around. He disarmed one man with a swift strike, used the pitchfork to trip another, and created enough chaos to send the rest fleeing into the woods. Her jaw tightened as she processed what she'd seen. This wasn't brute force. It was strategy, ingenuity, and sheer willpower. Humans weren't supposed to possess such qualities, not according to everything she'd learned. And yet, here was Alex, proving those assumptions wrong time and again. But it wasn't just his actions during the fight that intrigued her. Later that evening, after the adrenaline had faded, Alex sat alone by the fire outside his home. His face was calm, almost serene, as he stared into the flames. Zinara noticed how he methodically cleaned the pitchfork, treating it with respect despite its simplicity. Then he pulled out a small notebook, jotting down notes under the dim light of a lantern. She couldn't read the symbols he wrote, but the act itself spoke volumes. This human planned ahead, reflected on his experiences, and adapted, a trait she hadn't expected to find in someone so primitive. Over the next few days, Zinara continued her observations, piecing together fragments of Alex's life. She discovered that he lived with his aging father, a frail man who spent most of his time indoors. Despite the challenges, Alex never complained. He worked harder to ensure his father's comfort, cooking meals, fetching water, and tending to the farm single-handedly. There was no servant class here, no hierarchy dictating who did what. Everyone contributed, regardless of age or ability. One afternoon, while Alex practiced martial arts in a clearing near the woods, Zinara found herself drawn closer than usual. She crouched low behind a cluster of bushes, watching as he moved through a series of fluid motions. His punches were precise, his kicks controlled, and his balance impeccable. Though not as powerful as a Krillian warrior's strikes, his technique demonstrated discipline and focus. Suddenly, Alex stopped mid-motion, his head tilting slightly as though sensing something amiss. He turned slowly, his gaze sweeping across the area until it landed directly on her hiding spot. For a heartbeat, Zinara froze, certain she had been spotted. But instead of calling out or investigating further, Alex simply resumed his practice, as if dismissing the feeling as paranoia. Later that night, as she lay concealed among the trees, Zinara replayed the events in her mind. Why hadn't he confronted her? Did he know she was there, or was it mere coincidence? Either way, his behavior puzzled her. Most humans would have panicked or fled upon realizing they were being watched. Not Alex. He acted as though her presence didn't faze him, an attitude that both frustrated and fascinated her. As the days stretched on, Zinara began noticing subtle changes in herself. Her initial disdain for humanity started to waver, replaced by a reluctant admiration. She admired Alex's resilience, his resourcefulness, and his unwavering sense of responsibility. These traits weren't weaknesses. They were strengths, albeit different from those valued by her people. Still, doubt lingered in her mind. Was she misinterpreting what she saw? Could Alex's actions be a facade, hiding some ulterior motive? Or worse, was she allowing her judgment to cloud because of her isolation? Determined to uncover the truth, Zenara decided to test him. On the 5th day, she deliberately left traces of her presence: broken twigs, faint footprints, and a discarded piece of alien tech disguised as junk. She wanted to see how Alex would react when pushed, to gauge whether his courage extended beyond mere bravado. To her surprise, Alex didn't panic or call for help. Instead, he gathered tools and set traps around the perimeter of the farm, preparing for whatever might come. When night fell, he patrolled the area with a flashlight and a sturdy staff, his movements deliberate and cautious. Watching him from afar, Zenara felt a flicker of respect ignite within her. Humans might lack advanced technology or physical prowess, but they compensated with adaptability and grit. Perhaps her people had underestimated them, not just Alex, but all of humanity. By the end of the week, Zenara realized she couldn't stay hidden forever. If she wanted answers, she would need to confront Alex directly. But as she prepared to reveal herself, a nagging question lingered in her mind. Would he see her as a threat, or as someone willing to understand? The decision to reveal herself weighed heavily on Zenara. For days, she had observed Alex from the shadows, piecing together fragments of his life and testing his resolve. Now, standing at the edge of the forest, she prepared to step into the open, a move that went against every instinct drilled into her as a Krillian warrior. Her people prided themselves on stealth, strength, and superiority. Yet here she was, about to expose herself to a human, a creature her society deemed weak and insignificant. It wasn't just curiosity driving her anymore, it was necessity. Her ship's repairs required resources she couldn't gather alone, and Alex's knowledge of Earth's environment made him invaluable. Still, trust was not something Zenara gave easily. Every step toward the farm felt like crossing uncharted territory, each breath laced with caution. Alex was splitting logs when he sensed her approach. His axe paused mid-swing, and he turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto the figure emerging from the trees. Zenara stood tall, her armor glinting faintly in the sunlight, her expression unreadable. "You're persistent," Alex said finally, lowering the axe, but keeping it within reach. "I figured you'd show up sooner or later." Zenara raised an eyebrow, surprised by his composure. "You knew I was watching you." "Not at first," Alex admitted, leaning casually on the handle of the axe. "But after a while, it was hard not to notice. You're good at hiding, but you're not invisible." Her lips tightened, so he had been aware of her presence all along. The thought unsettled her, though she refused to let it show. "Why didn't you confront me earlier?" Alex shrugged. "Figured you'd come out when you were ready. Besides, you didn't seem like much of a threat." The word hit her like a punch to the chest. Threat. Coming from anyone else, it might have sounded arrogant. From Alex, it felt almost playful, a challenge wrapped in calm confidence. "I could have killed you," Zenara said sharply, stepping closer. "Easily." "Could have," Alex agreed, meeting her gaze without flinching. "But you didn't, which means either you're not as dangerous as you look, or you need something from me." Her jaw clenched. This human was infuriatingly perceptive. "I'm stranded here," she admitted reluctantly. "My ship crashed. I need materials to repair it. And you think I can help?" "You seem resourceful," Zenara replied, her tone clipped. "If what I've seen is any indication." For a moment, Alex studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. "All right. Deal. But we do things my way." "What does that mean?" It means no sneaking around, no threats, and no lies. We work together, or not at all. Zenara hesitated. Cooperation wasn't part of her nature. Among her people, alliances were forged through dominance and submission, not mutual respect. But Alex wasn't offering submission. He was proposing equality. It was foreign, unsettling, and yet oddly appealing. Finally, she nodded. Agreed. Over the next few days, their uneasy partnership began to take shape. Alex introduced Zenara to the basics of human survival: how to identify edible plants, purify water, and navigate the terrain. In return, Zenara shared glimpses of her advanced technology, explaining its functions in simple terms. She showed him how her wrist-mounted scanner could detect mineral deposits, a tool that proved invaluable for locating materials needed for her ship's repairs. Despite their progress, tension simmered beneath the surface. Zenara struggled to reconcile her ingrained beliefs with the reality of Alex's capabilities. He wasn't physically strong by Krillian standards, but his adaptability and problem-solving skills impressed her more than she cared to admit. Meanwhile, Alex found himself fascinated by Zenara's alien perspective. Her world was harsh and unforgiving, where survival depended on brute force and unwavering loyalty to one's kind. Yet there were moments when he glimpsed vulnerability behind her stoic facade, a hint of loneliness, perhaps, or a longing for connection. One evening, as they sat by the fire outside Alex's home, the conversation turned personal. "So, your people, they really think humans are worthless?" Alex asked, poking at the flames with a stick. Zenara hesitated before answering. "Worthless isn't the right word. Weak, maybe. Fragile. My kind values strength above all else. Physical strength, power, control. And what happens if you don't measure up?" Her voice softened, barely audible over the crackling fire. "You don't survive." Alex glanced at her, seeing the weight of those words etched into her features. For the first time, he realized how much pressure she carried, not just as a warrior, but as someone trying to live up to impossible expectations. "Well," he said after a pause, "maybe strength isn't just about muscles or weapons. Maybe it's about sticking together, helping each other out. That's how we get by here." Zenara frowned, mulling over his words. Humans relied on cooperation rather than conquest. It was a concept so alien to her that it took effort to grasp. And yet, as she looked around at the modest farmstead, the crops thriving under Alex's care, the animals resting peacefully, it made a strange kind of sense. Their alliance deepened as they worked side by side, combining their strengths to overcome challenges. When heavy machinery broke down, Alex improvised repairs using scraps and tools. When scavenging expeditions led them into treacherous terrain, Zenara's combat training kept them safe from predators. Slowly but surely, a fragile bond began to form between them, one built on mutual respect and shared goals. By the end of the week, significant progress had been made on Zenara's ship. With Alex's help, she located most of the necessary components and began assembling them. As she worked, she couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. Once the repairs were complete, she would leave this place, and Alex, behind. The thought troubled her more than she cared to admit. But for now, there was still work to be done. And as long as they stood together, neither of them was truly alone. The uneasy peace between Zenara and Alex was shattered one crisp morning when Zenara's wrist-mounted scanner emitted a sharp, insistent beep. She froze mid-step, her violet eyes narrowing, as she studied the device. The signal was faint but unmistakable. A Krillian vessel had entered Earth's orbit. Alex noticed the change in her demeanor immediately. "What is it?" he asked, setting down the toolbox they had been using to repair her ship. Zenara didn't answer right away. Her mind raced, piecing together the implications. If another Krillian ship was here, it could only mean one thing. A hunter squad had been dispatched to retrieve her, or eliminate her if she was deemed compromised. Either way, Alex's life was now in grave danger. "They found me," Zenara said finally, her voice tight with tension. "Who's they?" Alex pressed, his brow furrowing. "My people. A retrieval team." Alex crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "And what happens when they get here?" Zenara hesitated before answering. "They'll assume you're a threat, or worse, irrelevant collateral. Either way, they won't hesitate to remove you from the equation." For a moment, Alex stared at her, weighing the gravity of her words. Then, to her surprise, he smirked. "Guess we better make sure that doesn't happen." Her frustration flared. "This isn't a game, human. These are elite warriors trained for combat. You can't possibly." "I'm not saying I can take them on alone," Alex interrupted, his tone firm. "But I know this place better than they do, and I've faced worse odds before." Zenara wanted to argue, to dismiss his confidence as foolish bravado. But deep down, she knew he had a point. Alex's knowledge of the terrain and his knack for improvisation were assets she couldn't afford to ignore. Reluctantly, she nodded. "Fine. We prepare." Over the next few hours, they worked tirelessly to fortify their position. Alex led Zenara through the woods, pointing out natural choke points and areas where ambushes could be set. They gathered traps, simple yet effective devices designed to slow down or injure intruders, and concealed them along likely paths of approach. Zenara contributed by calibrating their scanner to detect movement within a wide radius, giving them precious seconds of warning. As night fell, the forest grew eerily quiet. Even the usual nocturnal sounds seemed muted, as though nature itself sensed the impending danger. Zenara paced restlessly, her hand resting on the hilt of her weapon. Despite her training and experience, she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her gut. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting Alex. "You should leave," Zenara said suddenly, breaking the silence. Alex looked up from sharpening a wooden stake. "What? If you run now, you might escape notice. My people won't waste resources chasing after one insignificant human and let you handle them alone. No chance. This isn't your fight." Zenara snapped, her voice rising. "You don't understand what you're up against." "Maybe not," Alex admitted, standing to face her. "But I know enough to realize that running won't solve anything. Besides, you've got my back. I've got yours. That's how this works." Zenara opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat. For all her superior strength and advanced technology, there was something undeniably compelling about Alex's unwavering resolve. It reminded her of the resilience she had witnessed in him time and again, the same quality that had forced her to question everything she thought she knew about humanity. Before she could respond, her scanner buzzed urgently. 3 distinct heat signatures were closing in fast. "They're here," Zenara said grimly, gripping her weapon tightly. "Then let's show them what we're made of," Alex replied, picking up a makeshift spear. The first skirmish occurred near the edge of the forest. 2 Krillian hunters emerged silently, their armored forms blending seamlessly with the shadows. They moved with predatory precision, scanning the area for signs of Zenara. What they didn't anticipate was Alex's trap, a tripwire rigged to release a net of weighted ropes. One hunter stumbled into it, momentarily entangled, while the other lunged toward Alex with terrifying speed. Zenara intercepted the second hunter, engaging in a brutal hand-to-hand battle. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, the metallic ring echoing through the trees. Despite being evenly matched in terms of skill, Zenara fought with a ferocity born of desperation. These weren't just enemies. They were her own kind, sent to judge and condemn her. Meanwhile, Alex managed to evade the first hunter, using the dense foliage to his advantage. He hurled stones and swung his spear with surprising accuracy, keeping the warrior off balance until Zenara joined the fray. Together, they drove the hunters back, forcing them to retreat deeper into the forest. But the victory was short-lived. As they regrouped, Zenara's scanner revealed more approaching signals. The hunters were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. "We can't keep this up forever," Alex said, breathing heavily. "No," Zinara agreed, her gaze steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "But we don't have to. We just need to hold out long enough to finish repairing my ship." Alex nodded, determination blazing in his eyes. "Then let's make every second count." Together, they prepared for the next wave, their bond forged stronger by the shared struggle. For the first time, Zinara felt a flicker of hope, not because of her own strength, but because of the human beside her who refused to give up. The forest was alive with chaos. The clash of weapons, the crackle of energy blasts, and the sharp intake of breaths filled the air as Zinara and Alex fought side by side against the relentless Krillian hunters. Each moment stretched into eternity, every decision carrying life or death consequences. Despite their earlier victories, neither Zinara nor Alex harbored any illusions about the odds. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. Zinara moved like a storm, her every strike precise and devastating. Her weapon, a sleek blade forged from alien metal, hummed with energy as it sliced through the air. She parried an attack from one hunter, twisted around another's assault, and delivered a crushing blow that sent him sprawling. Yet for all her skill, even she couldn't hold off 4 opponents indefinitely. "Behind you," Alex shouted, his voice cutting through the din. Without hesitation, Zinara ducked just as a plasma bolt whizzed past her head, narrowly missing its mark. In the same instant, Alex hurled a sharpened stick at the attacking hunter, striking him in the shoulder. The distraction gave Zinara the opening she needed. With a swift motion, she disarmed the wounded warrior and knocked him unconscious. But relief was fleeting. More hunters closed in, their glowing eyes scanning the battlefield with predatory focus. They had underestimated Zinara and Alex once. They wouldn't make the same mistake again. "We're not going to last much longer," Alex said between heavy breaths, gripping his makeshift spear tightly. His hands were raw from hours of combat, but he refused to let exhaustion slow him down. "We need a plan." Zinara glanced at him briefly, then back at their encroaching enemies. "There's only one option left," she said grimly. "We draw them toward the shipwreck site. If we can trap them there, we might stand a chance." Alex nodded, understanding immediately. The crash site wasn't just where Zinara's damaged vessel lay. It was also littered with debris and unstable fragments of alien technology. A well-placed explosion could turn it into a deadly kill zone. "Lead the way," Alex said, his tone resolute. With renewed purpose, they began retreating strategically, luring the hunters deeper into the forest. Every step was calculated, every movement designed to keep their pursuers on edge. When one hunter broke ranks to charge ahead, Alex sprang a hidden snare, trapping him in a net of tangled vines. Another fell victim to a pit trap lined with sharpened stakes, his cries echoing through the trees. Despite these setbacks, the remaining hunters pressed forward, undeterred. Their leader, a towering figure clad in reinforced armor, barked orders in their guttural language. Zinara recognized him instantly. It was Virak, a seasoned commander known for his ruthlessness. Seeing him here meant the Empire wasn't taking any chances. "They're getting desperate," Zinara muttered as they neared the crash site. "Good," Alex replied, his lips curling into a grim smile. Desperate people make mistakes. Reaching the clearing, they positioned themselves among the wreckage, using the scattered remains of Zinara's ship as cover. The hunters arrived moments later, fanning out cautiously as they scanned the area. Virak stepped forward, his weapon trained on Zinara. "You've betrayed your kind," he growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "Siding with primitives. Pathetic." Zinara's expression remained impassive. "You don't understand what strength truly is," she shot back. Virak sneered. "Strength is power. Control. You've abandoned both." Before either could say more, Alex acted. He triggered a device Zinara had rigged earlier, causing a section of the wreckage to collapse and block the hunter's escape route. At the same time, Zenera unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, forcing the hunters to scatter. Chaos erupted once more. Alex darted between the ruins, setting off traps and creating distractions. One hunter lunged at him, only to trigger a tripwire that released a cascade of burning embers, forcing him to retreat. Another pursued Zenera into a narrow passageway, only to be ambushed by Alex from behind. Yet the real test came when Varric cornered Zenera near the heart of the crash site. His weapon crackled with energy, its tip inches from her chest. For a split second, Zenera thought it was over. But then, Alex appeared seemingly out of nowhere, tackling Varric with brute force. The two grappled fiercely, rolling across the ground until Alex managed to pin the commander down. Seizing the opportunity, Zenera activated the final phase of their plan. She planted a small explosive charge near the ship's core reactor, triggering a countdown timer. The hunters scrambled to escape, but the collapsing debris and spreading flames cut off their retreat. "Let's go," Zenera yelled, grabbing Alex's arm and pulling him away from the inferno. They ran as fast as they could, putting distance between themselves and the explosion. Behind them, the crash site erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the forest. The hunters' screams were drowned out by the roar of destruction. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, Alex sank to the ground, his chest heaving. Did we get them all?" Zenera shook her head. "Probably not. But we've bought ourselves some time." For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of what they had just accomplished settled over them. Together, they had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, not through brute force alone, but through teamwork, ingenuity, and sheer determination. As Zenera looked at Alex, she felt something stir within her, something she hadn't felt in years. Respect, gratitude, perhaps even trust. "You saved my life back there," she said quietly. Alex shrugged, offering a weak smile. "Guess we're even now." Zenera didn't respond, but her gaze softened ever so slightly. For the first time in her life, she realized that strength wasn't just about dominance or superiority. It was about connection, about standing together, no matter how different they might be. And as they sat there amidst the wreckage of battle, watching the sun rise over the horizon, Zenera knew one thing for certain: her journey was far from over. The aftermath of the battle left Zenera and Alex physically and emotionally drained. The forest, once alive with the sounds of nature, now carried an eerie silence broken only by the distant crackle of smoldering wreckage. Smoke curled into the sky, a grim reminder of the destruction they had unleashed. Yet despite the chaos, there was a sense of relief, a fleeting moment of calm before the storm that still loomed ahead. Zenera knelt by the edge of the clearing, her fingers brushing against the scorched earth. Her thoughts raced as she processed what had just happened. They had defeated the hunters, or at least driven them off. But the victory felt hollow. The Krillian Empire wouldn't stop hunting her, not after this. She had crossed a line, defying her people in ways she never imagined possible. And Alex, he had stood by her side, risking everything to protect her. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, his voice cutting through her reverie. She glanced up at him, startled by the concern in his tone. "I'm fine," she replied curtly, though her expression betrayed the turmoil within. Alex crouched beside her, studying her face intently. "You don't look fine. It doesn't matter how I look." Zenera snapped, standing abruptly. "What matters is what happens next. My people will send reinforcements. This planet isn't safe anymore. For either of us." Alex frowned. "So what are you saying? You're just going to leave? After everything we've been through?" "I have no choice," Zenera said, her voice strained. "If I stay, your world becomes a target. If I go, maybe I can convince them to leave Earth alone. And if they don't listen?" Alex pressed, his frustration mounting. "What then? You'll fight them all by yourself. That's suicide." Zenera turned away, unable to meet his gaze. It's my duty. My responsibility. Responsibility to who? Alex demanded, stepping closer. To a society that sees you as expendable. To people who'd rather destroy than understand. You're better than that, Zanara. Don't let them define who you are. Her fists clenched at her sides, the weight of his words pressing down on her. He was right, painfully so. For years, she had lived by the Empire's rules, sacrificing pieces of herself to fit their mold. But now, faced with the prospect of abandoning Alex and everything she had come to admire about humanity, those rules felt suffocating. I don't know what to do, she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex hesitated, then placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Then don't think about it alone. Let me help you figure it out. For a moment, Zanara allowed herself to lean into his support. It was strange, this feeling of connection. So foreign, yet so comforting. Among her own kind, such vulnerability would be seen as weakness. Here, with Alex, it felt like strength. Over the next few hours, they discussed their options. Returning to the Empire wasn't viable. Zanara knew too well the consequences of betrayal. Staying on Earth meant risking exposure, not just for her, but for Alex and everyone else. Yet leaving entirely wasn't an option either. Repairing her ship would take time. And even then, she couldn't guarantee safety elsewhere. Finally, Alex proposed a plan. What if we make it impossible for them to find you? Disable your ship's homing beacon. Erase any trace of your presence here. If they can't track you, they might assume you're dead or lost forever. Zanara considered the idea, weighing the risks. Cutting ties with the Empire would mean severing her last link to her home, her identity. But staying connected came with its own dangers, not just for her, but for humanity as a whole. It's dangerous, she said eventually, but it might work. Together, they returned to the remnants of her ship, salvaging what components they could. Zanara worked methodically, dismantling the homing beacon and rerouting its power supply. Each step felt like closing a door behind her, leaving part of her past behind. When the task was complete, she stood back, staring at the gutted console. "This changes everything," she murmured. "It does," Alex agreed. "But sometimes change is necessary." As night fell, they sat together beneath the stars, the wreckage of her ship casting long shadows across the ground. The decision weighed heavily on Zanara, but for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. Hope that she could forge a new path, one defined not by duty or fear, but by choice. "You realize this means staying here," she said softly. Alex nodded. "Yeah, and you'll have to teach me how to live like a human." A smile tugged at the corners of Alex's mouth. "I think I can manage that." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zanara allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. A future where she didn't have to conform to expectations or hide who she truly was. Where strength wasn't measured by dominance, but by connection. And as she looked at Alex, sitting quietly beside her, she realized something profound. Belonging wasn't about where you came from. It was about who you chose to stand with. Weeks passed, and the forest began to heal from the scars of battle. The smoldering wreckage of Zanara's ship was slowly reclaimed by nature, its twisted remains becoming part of the landscape. For Zanara, however, life had taken on a new rhythm, one far removed from the rigid discipline of her Krillian upbringing. Under Alex's guidance, she learned to adapt to human ways, discovering beauty in simplicity and strength in vulnerability. At first, blending into human society proved challenging. Her alien appearance, sharp features, violet eyes, and shimmering armor drew curious stares whenever she ventured beyond the farm. But Alex taught her how to conceal herself, using simple clothing and subtle mannerisms to blend in. He introduced her to the townsfolk as a distant relative recovering from an accident, a story vague enough to satisfy their curiosity without inviting suspicion. The people of the small rural town were kind, welcoming Zanara with open arms despite her quiet demeanor. She observed them closely, marveling at the diversity of their strengths. There was Mrs. Callahan, the elderly schoolteacher who inspired young minds with patience and wisdom. Tom, the blacksmith whose hands crafted tools that sustained the community. And Lily, the artist whose paintings captured the essence of the world around them. Each person embodied a different form of resilience, proving that strength wasn't limited to physical prowess or technological superiority. Zenara spent her days working alongside Alex, tending to the farm and learning the intricacies of human survival. At night, they sat by the fire, sharing stories about their respective worlds. Alex spoke of humanity's struggles, the wars, the injustices, the moments of triumph, and how these experiences shaped their collective identity. Zenara, in turn, shared tales of Krillian society, its rigid hierarchies, unyielding traditions, and the relentless pursuit of dominance. "You're not like them," Alex said one evening, his voice thoughtful. "Not anymore." Zenara glanced at him, surprised by the observation. "What do you mean?" "You've changed," he explained. "You used to see everything through the lens of power and control. Now you see the value in connection, in understanding." Her gaze dropped to the flames, flickering softly in the darkness. "I didn't choose this path," she admitted. "It chose me." "Maybe that's what makes it special," Alex replied with a smile. As weeks turned into months, Zenara found herself embracing her new life. She helped Alex expand the farm, using her knowledge of alien technology to improve irrigation systems and increase crop yields. In return, Alex introduced her to the joys of human creativity, music, art, and storytelling. Together, they forged a bond deeper than either had anticipated, built on mutual respect and shared growth. Yet there were moments when the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. Nights when she lay awake, staring at the stars and wondering if she had made the right choice. Would the Empire ever stop searching for her? Could she truly protect Earth from those who saw it as expendable? One such night, unable to sleep, Zenara climbed to the top of a nearby hill. From there, she could see the entire valley spread out before her. The fields bathed in moonlight, the distant glow of the town, and the vast expanse of sky above. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a reminder of why she had chosen this path. "You okay?" Alex's voice startled her, and she turned to find him standing a few paces away, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," she said, though her tone betrayed the uncertainty within. Alex joined her, leaning against a tree as he gazed out at the horizon. "Thinking about your home." "Sometimes," Zenara admitted, "but mostly, I think about the future, about what comes next." "Well," Alex said after a pause, "whatever happens, you're not alone. Not anymore." His words struck a chord deep within her. For so long, she had carried the burden of survival on her own, believing that strength meant enduring hardship in solitude. But Alex had shown her otherwise. That true strength lay in trusting others, in leaning on them when the weight became too much to bear. As dawn broke over the hills, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Zenara felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer bound by the expectations of her past. She had chosen a new path, one defined not by fear or obligation, but by hope and possibility. And as she stood there beside Alex, watching the sunrise bathe the world in light, she realized that belonging wasn't about fitting in. It was about finding a place where you could be yourself, a place where differences weren't barriers, but bridges. For the first time in her life, Zenara felt whole.